Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. It is draft week. So we will try to decipher what is real, what is not. You'll start to hear a bunch of stuff. What are we hearing? What do we know? Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, and the Inside the Birds podcast is back after a much-needed vacation. Welcome back, man. You picked the perfect time. Draft week. Did you strategically pick to come back during draft week?
Of course. I strategically lined up the whole school calendar that had vacation last week. And, you know, between Easter, Passover, however they figure it out, I did that all.
Nice. Good job out of you. Well, you're here for draft week. Here we go. A lot of stuff to kind of dive into. I want to start with something that might be a little interesting under the radar here, which is the team signed the tender for Nate Herbig the other day, and I'm interested to see what the meaning of the timing on that is. Andre Dillard, Nate Herbig, are those guys' names? I mean, Herbig, there is something to do with why they signed it when they did, correct? I mean, if they have to trade him, I think he has to be, that tender needs to be signed, and I guess there are some murmurs that people are interested and have called the team about him. So if they want to trade him, he would have to have signed that deal ahead of time, right?
Right, because he was a restricted free agent who the team put a tender on, a tag on, which means they retain his rights so long as he signs the tender, which he did. If he does not sign the tender, it's not like, oh, he's just a free agent. That doesn't work that way where anybody could be able to sign him.
Right.
They would have to rescind that tender. Right.
So he signs that today, which would mean if teams are calling about Nate Herbig on draft night, he would be a guy. Andre Dillard, I guess you guys have talked a lot about on whether or not teams would be calling for him. I would imagine that if teams need offensive line help, Philadelphia is a spot that they would be on the phone with.
You can imagine that, and it would make sense. You know, we've talked about Andre Dillard, Nate Herbig, certainly. Isaac Seumalo is a guy who is, you know, a starter who's not supposed to lose his job from injury, but Landon Dickerson took over as a second-round pick at left guard, played really well there. There is an opening at right guard, conceivably, but he'd still have to, you know, fend off Jack Driscoll, who, you know, we'll see how he comes back from the injury that he had at the end of the year. But Nate Herbig, and I can say this with a very good amount of confidence, that interior offensive line is very likely to be an area that the Eagles address at some point during the draft. First round, no, probably not. Tyler Linderbaum, of course, will be on everybody's, you know, board in some capacity, but I don't see that happening in the first round for the Eagles unless it's a scenario where everybody else who they have rated in that area or higher is gone. But I do think that round 3, round 4 is a good round to look at for the Eagles when it comes to interior offensive line prospects.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of it is how they view inside the organization, Geoff, who the next center is. Is he a guy that's already on this roster, be it Dickerson, Seumalo, somebody else, or do they feel like at some point when Kelsey does retire, and that's going to be sooner than later, that person needs to be drafted and groomed to take over that role?
Yeah, there was a point in time where they did feel that Isaac Seumalo could be a successor. You know, when they drafted him, certainly because he had that versatility and the athleticism to be able to play center, even if he started off his career at guard. You remember he struggled in 2017. His second year, he lost his job after 2 games to Stefan Wisniewski. They go on to win the Super Bowl. Comes back in 2018, starts plays 13 games, started 9, played fairly well, played really well in 2019 as well, but 12 total games in 2020 and 2021, Mike, has changed the story about what they can fairly expect from Isaac Seumalo just from a health and durability standpoint. And what was once seen as a very logical successor to Jason Kelsey, you now have to wonder if he can be, because Jason Kelsey has been pretty durable, especially in the second part of his career here. Isaac Seumalo has not.
Yeah, you're right about that. Seumalo has had various injuries. And again, you mentioned it. Are they going to open up right guard and say, hey, Seumalo, Jack Driscoll, Nate Herbig, you guys battle it out over there? Or do they value getting something in return for one of those guys? Would they rather the competition and the depth? The depth helped them out last year. Or would they rather get something in return? Because, as you mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if they took an interior lineman there. You've got Herbig, you've got Driscoll, you've got Seumalo, you've got Dickerson. That's 4 guys. I mean, I don't know who else off the top of my head that I'm forgetting about, but, they might say, hey, we have enough depth at that spot if we just keep everybody.
Well, they clearly, if they're looking at this draft to get another interior offensive lineman who can play guard and then maybe kick to center, then they clearly see the bigger picture, and that's the depth that they have is depth right now. Nate Herbig is only here for a year on a 1-year tender, if they keep him right. Jason Kelsey is very, very, very likely. I know we said this last year, but very likely you have to approach every year with him as it's a 1-year deal, his last year. So that's 2 guys who potentially won't be here next year. And then, of course, Seumalo, as I mentioned, has the injury history, and if he's available, because he has a team-friendly contract, a good contract, other teams might be calling the Eagles about him, and if they unload him, then all of a sudden you're not as deep on the interior as you once were. So some of that is cart before horse and chicken versus egg. Right now looks different than, say, Friday or Saturday if they do draft an interior offensive lineman. Then Seumalo becomes even more expendable if that's what they want to do. So, the team always looks to upgrade the offensive line, and if they do bring in another one through the draft, then it would signal that they will probably look to move Seumalo if they don't wind up moving him before the end of the draft.
Yeah. Obviously, Jeff, a receiver in the first round, indeed they could go that route. Jalen Reagor, he would probably be available via trade, but if they want a receiver at number 15, that seems to be, and see if you agree, right around where the run of receivers could start. So in other words, if Howie wants a receiver, it seems that he could have the pick of which one he wants. How many receivers do you think, will be off the board by the time they pick at 15?
It's a great question. We had our annual Inside the Birds NFL mock draft, first round mock draft, come out today. Myself, Adam Kaplan, Andrew DeCecco. And when we got to 15, Garrett Wilson was still on the board. So I guess I'm playing a little spoiler. The Eagles have 2 picks, so I won't tell you who they got in the second one, but you have to listen to the pod. But that's a pretty good – I came away thinking that the board, the way we predicted, just seemed to fall that way, but I would be sort of surprised if Garrett Wilson made it out of the top 10 to 12. And I would also be in our mock. We had the Falcons taking Jamison Williams from Alabama. So I think the run will actually start a little bit earlier.
Okay, because I don't know if you saw Todd McShay, his draft buzz is that the Eagle. He's hearing from NFL executives that the Eagles' preference is to take Jamison Williams at number 15.
Well, I hardly think the Eagles are telling other NFL executives who exactly they want to take. I can imagine.
No, but that could just be from, hey, my feeling from talking to them, knowing Howie, he's been there long enough. I kind of can get a feel on him. I'm imagining that's where these, feelings are coming from. They're right?
Yes, of course. When Howie has to talk to other teams about trade up possibilities, the question he has to answer, you don't just have to tell who you trade up for. But the team wants to know, is it quarterback? Because obviously the price gets higher there. And then the team likes to know maybe whether it's an offensive guy or a defensive guy, just to kind of measure whether or not they want to move out of that slot or not. And you kind of have to be honest, because if you tell a team, oh, I'm thinking of an offensive player, and then you go and take a defensive end, you're never going to have the ability to make a nice trade with that team again. You can't, burn bridges like that. So you have to be somewhat honest. Now, the thing about Howie and the Eagles is that they will explore multiple opportunities. So they may be telling one team, trade up, looking at offense, wide receiver. They may be talking to another team, trade up, defense, secondary type thing as well, which is why you probably have also seen reports about a potential trade up for Sauce Gardner. So I'm not saying that the reports are wrong. I'm just saying that every stone is going to be turned here in trade up scenarios to see which kind of players they can get. But yeah, I mean, shouldn't be surprised that the Eagles, who have done a lot of homework on wide receivers, would like Jamison Williams.
Yeah, and I mean, we know with Howie Roseman, he's always ready to pull the trigger on a trade. You know, the Eagles can move up or down with both of their picks. I mean, at 15, they can move up. They could be at 18 and decide to move back. I mean, so they have two spots that they can either move up or the second one say, you know what, I guess I got 15. I don't need 18. I'll move back, which I think of the two, which is moving 15 up or 18 back, which is more of a possibility for you?
18 back.
Yeah, I agree.
18. I think that, you know, if the trade isn't there to be made to go up for whatever reason, then you can sit there at 15 and say, probably going to be 3 or 4 guys that I'll be happy with at that spot. And then to pick again a couple picks later, knowing that this draft it might be a little bit short on elite talent, but it's long on good players, just good players who are going to be impact players, you know, key role players, starters. They may not make 2 or 3 Pro Bowls, but they'll be pretty good players for you. This draft is good for that. And the Eagles we talked about this right before vacation. The Eagles have like an elite blue chip player in Darius Slay, who's older, and Javon Hargrave. And then you look at some of their defense and you think they go from elite to just like replacement level really quickly. They need some of that in between, like those good starters who are going to be good for you for a couple of years. Right? They may not be Pro Bowlers, but they're not very easily replaceable either. And that's where the Eagles really need to capitalize.
What's more likely for you, Jeff? Marcus Epps and Anthony Harris are the starters, or that somebody is taken in one of the first 2 nights and that person is one of the starters at safety?
Marcus Epps and Anthony Harris are the starters.
Right, because if they take a guy on...
I'm just going with the history of the Eagles there.
Yeah, because if they take a guy on Saturday, you know, you would imagine that guy's probably not ready to supplant Anthony Harris or Marcus Epps.
Well, it all depends on how the board falls, you know, and who it is that they're taking. But you're right. I mean, theoretically, Kevon Wallace is a guy they got on a Saturday a couple of years ago for a 4th-round pick, and he has not been ready. He's just not the guy yet, and probably won't be. But Jack Driscoll is a guy they got in the 4th round, and he was ready to. He started as a rookie of the season opener at right tackle. So, and not because he was great, but because of injuries. But still, I mean, he was a guy who they liked early on.
That's a different position, though.
It is a different position.
I mean, an offensive lineman, if you told me, hey, I got a 5th-round pick, I have some expectation that he could play, especially in the interior part of the line.
Yeah, I would say
you tell me a safety
you know,
is in the 5th round, I'm going to have a hard time thinking the safety is going to supplant somebody right off the bat.
That's fair. Although I would say with the Eagles, when you're battling against, you know, Marcus Epps, who they like and who I've liked, and Anthony Harris, your bar to like really exceed and maybe get into that starting lineup is a lot different than, say, if you're a 5th-round pick on the Ravens trying to make it.
Yeah. I do want to. We touched on wide receiver in the draft. Obviously, JJ Arcega-Whiteside has been a failed wide receiver. How realistic is this experiment of moving to the tight end? Is this just we don't even care, just try that, and if it works, great. If not, we were planning on cutting you anyway?
The funny thing is, I feel like it's just a change in title and classroom and position coach, because if you look at it, he was an interior wide receiver who was only on the field for blocking out of the 11 personnel, out of a flexed out position.
Fair,
so he was a tight end.
To be fair, though, he's 6'2", 225. He's a small tight end.
Yes. Yeah, he's a small tight end. So we'll see if this involves any weight gain or if they just want him to be kind of a flex tight end, which is really what he was last year anyway,
right,
but more as a blocker. So I think to me, when this happens, 9 times out of 10, it means that you're not going to be on the team. They're just, throwing something against the wall. I thought that about Jannard Avery last year, but they figured out a role for him because he actually fit what they needed sort of in the scheme last year. But that was only a 1-year thing for him too. Yeah. So
let me ask you something about.
I'm not like stick for him.
Let me ask you something about Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, I do remember having that one big catch. He was kind of inside the hashes. Is he so bad that there is no role for him? I mean, he's a big physical guy. One of the reasons they liked him, he had catch radius. He was able to kind of go up and make plays at Stanford. he was a really good player there. Okay, he's not a burner. He's a tough kid. But is he so bad that he can't be a slot guy or that he couldn't be a tight end that is more of a receiver? They're like I know he's not Darren Waller. That guy's 6'6", 245, but an athletic guy who creates problems underneath. Like, is he just so inept that he doesn't have the skill set to give you anything in the receiving game?
The best way I can answer that, Mike, is that he's been on the team for 3 years. They have not been blessed with great wide receiver talent for most of those 3 years.
Right.
They put him on the field quite a bit the first 2 years. And like you said, there was the splash play here and there, but he doesn't run well. His thing was supposed to be, as you just said, contested catch radius. Can't say you've seen enough of that acumen where he's like a Anquan Bolden type of player that compensates with not much speed with just amazing ability to do those things. So he's been there at practice every single day. It's not like they haven't seen enough of JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the answer is no, he can't play.
Yeah. I'm going to no, could he go to another, like Mac Hollins? Let's remember Mac Hollins, right? He went 7 straight weeks playing. I forget. He played like a starter number of snaps for 2 or 3 years ago for the Eagles, and it was almost like a record. I think he had like no targets. In those 7 weeks, and it was, can he play or not play? Well, it didn't look like he can play. He's not. It's not like he's out of the league. I mean, he's a 4th wide receiver or a 5th wide receiver, and every once in a while you saw him on the Dolphins making a play. But the bottom line is he's not a good enough wide receiver. So can JJ Arcega-Whiteside go somewhere and make a few plays every once in a while? Maybe. Put him with a great quarterback? Perhaps. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you're going to see some kind of renaissance somewhere else.
Of the receivers that are available, do you have one in this draft that you think fits across from Smith better than – because you might say, I like Jameson Williams, but he's not the right fit. Or I like Garrett Wilson, but he's not the right – do you have a guy that you think is the ideal fit?
Yes, I think somebody who has size is the ideal fit, because if you look at the wide receivers the Eagles have, whether it's Devontae Smith, who certainly is not a size receiver, Jalen Reagor is fighting to make the team and being on the team, but he's more what he was supposed to be was a speed vertical threat. Quez Watkins, speed vertical threat. They don't have in their wide receiver core, other than JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who's probably not going to be on the team, a real sort of Alshon Jeffrey-like guy, a size guy. And with this quarterback, Jalen Hurts, as someone put it to me, it's better to have a bigger body with a good catch radius, a wide catch radius. So maybe 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have talked to you about the USC kid, Drake London.
Yep.
Yeah. But now I look at it and say Drake London, Treylon Burks, those guys who are physical and have some size, probably makes sense for what the Eagles might want to do offensively at that position. So, I think those two guys would fit.
All right. So it's Monday, just back tomorrow, so we'll have more to talk about. And Monday, your feeling would be 15-18, yes, or a trade?
A trade.
Okay. Well, we'll see if you change your mind once you sleep on it tonight. Make a couple calls, all right?
I will do that.
Geoff Mosher, listen to the Inside the Birds podcast, their mock draft special, and just back tomorrow. Adam is here Wednesday, Andrew Thursday on draft day. And to recap it all, Adam will be back on Friday to give us his thoughts on the Eagles' first round, preview round number 2. Football at 4 has you all week long. Draft week is here. He is Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Geoff.
See you, brother.
All right, that's Geoff Mosher, and that is Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.